So this video is a complete guide on how to install a custom firmware on your PS3 Phat or Slim using the BG toolset. It's going to be a full setup as well, in showing you how to set up your ROMs on a server or your internal or external hard drives. Everything is linked in the video description, and again, this will only work on a PS3 Phat or Slim. This will not work on a super slim model. So first things first, you're going to get all the files by downloading the pack included in the video description and extracting it to your desktop. Once that's completed, we're going to open up the folder, and I've included a chart that'll show you which PS3s will work and which ones won't. Now you could check by the model number on the back, and anything after check 2500 will not install a CFW, and some of the 2500 models won't even install a custom firmware either. That being said, we're going to open up the first folder called modding, and then we're going to open up the folder called USB. Now we're going to plug in a USB drive, and we're just going to want to make sure that it's formatted to FAT32. So if you right click, and you could either format it to FAT32. Now if you don't have an option for FAT32, I'll show you how to get past that afterwards. Now this deletes everything on your USB, obviously. Now if you didn't have an option to do FAT32, it's probably because you have a larger drive, and you can use this tool here to format it to FAT32. Now this will work up to 2 terabytes, and we're going to be using this later on in the video for our external hard drive. But right now, all we want to do is make sure that our USB is formatted to FAT32. And since it is, we're going to drag and drop the PS3 folder inside the USB folder onto our USB. Now this is a hybrid firmware, and it will install on top of pretty much any other firmware that you have on your PS3. This is going to prep up our PS3 to be exploited later on. So what I'm doing here is I'm just copying over from this text file the MD5 hash of the update that we just copied over to our USB. And we want to verify that everything copied over correctly, so we'll go over to our USB, open up the PS3 and update folders, and you'll see the update file. We'll drag and drop into the MD5 checker and verify that the two numbers are the same. Jump back over to your PS3, and you could plug in your USB and then scroll over to the settings, and we're going to go to system settings, and then we're going to go all the way down to system information. So this PS3 is already updated to 4.90, which is good, but we're going to update it with a hybrid firmware. So you're going to want to update from storage media, and you could see there that that was the hybrid firmware that was showing up. Now it's just like any other update, so we're going to skip that. And you can see the PS3 is rebooted. Now you're not going to notice anything different here, but it's actually now semi-exploited so that we could run the full exploit from the web page later on. So we're going to go down to the settings, and we're just going to make sure that the internet connection is connected, and we'll also want to make sure that the date and time is currently updated to the internet. So we're just going to redo that right there, and then we're going to go to our internet browser, and you're going to go to the BG toolset website by going to http://www.ps3exploit.me. Now I'm thinking of doing a video on showing on how to self-host all the files that you need to do this process on your own in case this website eventually goes down. Now if you get to this page here, you're looking good. Press OK to all the prompts that come up, and we'll check out the page really quick. There's their PayPal donation, but what we want is right up here, and we're going to go to the main page. Now this is going to load all the plugins that's going to allow your PS3 to be flashed with custom firmware. The web page will load, and the plugin prompt will show up like that, make sure you press yes, or else you're going to have to reformat your whole system and reinstall a firmware or the hybrid firmware to get back to this step. Now, once your PS3 goes through this whole checklist, if you've got a model that's able to install custom firmware, it'll get a green check mark like this. If not, this is where you're going to have to go and do the PS3 hand way of running Homebrew. But everything is looking good here. So now we're going to have Memory Manager and System Manager. Now the Memory Manager, this is for more advanced uses, but what we want is the System Manager. So we're going to click over on this side here. Now once this loads up, this is where we're going to be able to download the patch and apply it to our PS3. So you're going to see I like to close all these trees just because it's a little bit easier. If you click the first option here, this gives you a backup dump of your current firmware that's on your PS3 to your USB drive. You don't have to do this step, but I've included a tool to verify that everything is good and this server is working. Now the second option is where we want to choose load patch via HTTP. So this will download the patch and get it ready to be loaded to our PS3 once it's finished downloading. So this should only take a few minutes to download. Once this is complete, we're going to say OK, and then we're going to go back to memory patch, and now we can apply the patch. Now this is actually going to modify your PS3. You do not want to turn off your PS3. Do not have an accidental power failure right now because it might not ever turn back on. So I've sped things up because this could take up to 5 to 10 minutes even. But hopefully you get this nice green check mark here and we could reboot our PS3. So now our PS3 is ready to install custom firmware, so we'll jump back to our PS3 and open up our download pack and go to the CFW and apps. We're going to plug back in our USB. You can see mine popped up here. The dump hex is the backup that we created when we modded our PS3. And again, I'm just going to format it again to FAT32. You could just simply delete all the files, but you can see everything in the USB folder in the CFW and apps. We're going to copy that over to our USB. That's going to take about 5 minutes, but once that's complete, we're going to double check the MD5 hash with the update in the PS3 folder on our USB. So we're just going to copy that number over to the MD5 checker. Paste that over, and then again we'll navigate over to our USB, and inside the PS3 and update folder you'll see the update file, and we just drag and drop that in the MD5 checker and verify the hash checks. Now that we've jumped back to our PS3, plug in the USB and update via storage media. Now this is going to update with the custom firmware, and it's just like any other update, so we're going to skip that, but it only takes a few minutes. Now we have a custom firmware on our PS3. If you want to upgrade the internal hard drive on your PS3, it's pretty easy to do. Now you could only upgrade to a 1.5 terabyte internal hard drive. So I've included a link to a 1 terabyte hard drive because I find the compatibility, and it's sort of hard to find a 1.5 terabyte hard drive on the market, but pretty much both models are the same. The PS3 Phat has a little window on the side of the console that you could just take the little clip out, and they use a Torx 8-bit, I believe. So you can pick that up at a normal hardware store if you get a electronics bit set, or I've included a link in the video description as well. So pretty much what you got to do is take out the hard drive that's provided and replace it with a new one. Now when you turn on your PS3 for the first time, it's just going to ask you to reinstall the firmware that you had installed on your PS3 right before you pulled out this hard drive. So both systems are pretty easy. Just with the PS3 Slim, the window's on the front instead of the side. Now with the PS3 Super Slim, you can't do this procedure because 1, it doesn't have a hard drive at all, and 2, you can't reinstall the firmware. So once you have everything buttoned back up, we're going to jump back to our PS3, and you'll see you'll be prompted with this screen. Press start and select, and make sure you have your USB plugged in, and it'll just reinstall the custom firmware. Now again, if you had any profiles, any kind of stuff like that, that's all going to be gone. It's on the other hard drive you just pulled out. And if you don't want to upgrade your internal hard drive, that's fine. You could just skip all this step here. So once this is done, it's going to be like a brand new PS3, like you just got it out of the box. So I'm going to skip all this because it's fairly boring, but once you've done that, you'll be greeted with this friendly screen showing you have a fully modded PS3. But what's a custom firmware without some Homebrew? So you can see if you scroll down to the package manager and install packages, go down to the standard, and then if you hold triangle, it should be install all packages. Now put the controller down because this is going to take about 15 minutes. But once that's complete, you're going to see now we have all the programs you want to run all your Homebrew and apps. You can see down in the system settings, we got a way bigger hard drive, and everything is running pretty. So what we're going to do now is load up multi-man because it's not fully installed. Now to install the full version, you want to hold down L1 and press X. Now keep holding down L1 and it should say installing Webman full. And then once that's installed, you're going to have the Webman plugin installed. And now we can set up all the ROMs so that they can be played. Now that we have our PS3 ready to accept ROMs, we're going to set up a hard drive. So we're going to plug it into our computer and we're going to check and see if it's formatted to FAT32. So we're going to right click on the drive and click properties, and you can see it's NTFS. Now before we format it to FAT32, we're going to open up Partition Manager. We're going to do this by typing in partition into the search menu and open up Disk Management. Once it loads up, we're going to look at our new drive, which is the letter D here. We're going to right click and we're going to delete the volume. Now this, same thing as formatting, deletes absolutely everything on the drive. Once that's complete, we're going to right click and we're going to convert to MBR disk. That means it has a master boot record. Now this needs to be done so that your PS3 will recognize your hard drive. After that, we're going to give it a new volume, and this time it has to be NTFS, but we're going to format it later to FAT32. This is only because Windows will not format larger drives to FAT32. So once this is complete, we can close out Disk Management. We're going to open up our download pack, and in the GUI format folder, we're going to open that up and you're going to see GUI format x64. Open that up and you're going to want to make sure you've got your drive selected. You can see E is selected and D is the drive I want. Make sure you've got the right drive selected or you'll delete everything off the wrong drive. Now click start, and this will take a few minutes, but this will format almost any large drive to FAT32. Once it's complete, you can just close this and we're good to go. So we're going to right click properties, and you can see it's FAT32 and it's a 1 terabyte drive. So now that our drive is formatted to FAT32, we need the proper folder structure. So we're going to open up our download pack and open up the second folder, and then we're going to go into the others folder. Now you want to go to the USB ROMs folder and select everything inside of here and copy it over to your new drive. This will make it so that your PS3 will be able to see all the different kinds of ROMs that you have and put them in the proper categories. So we've got our folder structure copied over, and I'm going to show you system by system and game type by game type how to copy it over to your PS3. So we're going to start off with our main hard drive dumps. So this is how you get the majority of your PS3 games copied over. So I'm just going to navigate to where I have all my PS3 backup ROMs. So if you got PS3 games in folder format like this, you just copy it over to the games folder on your USB. Now this will work fine as long as your game files aren't larger than 4.4 gigabytes. If you do, you'll see an error pop up and you won't be able to. Now PS2 games also have to be read from the internal hard drive from your PS3 hard drive. You can copy it over, and then you can copy it over later to your internal hard drive, but it will not boot. Now there's also PS3 ISO games. Now you can copy this over. Now for whatever reason I forgot to create the folder for this, but it's just called PS3 ISO, and you can just copy over PS3 ISOs directly into this folder, and that'll launch just fine on your PS3. Now for our PS1 games, you can do the same thing, and you could just copy over the bin and Q file over to the PSX ISO folder. So setting up your external hard drive is pretty easy. It's just pretty much dragging and dropping all your ROM files into the correct folder so your PS3 can see them. So we've covered PS3, PS2, and PS1 games. Now there's also PS3 package files. Now these install to the PS3 internal hard drive. So the easiest way is just to copy over the package file over to the root of your external HDD. So I'm just going to pick a random game and I'll just copy it over. Now again, this works great for any game or any game that doesn't have a file that's larger than 4.2 gigabytes. Now if you have a game that's over 4.2 gigabytes, we're going to have to use different methods to get your games over. Now for all your retro ROMs, so Game Boy, Super Nintendo, anything from the 90s and before, you won't have to deal with these file limits. So to get these games going, what you got to do is go into the ROMs folder and then select the proper folder. So you can see I just copied over all the Game Boy games into the folder GB. Now if you have any cover art, just copy it over into the same folder and make sure the file names are exactly the same. So to make sure everything's working good, we're going to jump to our PS3 and plug in our USB hard drive. Then we're going to scroll over to Webman and we're going to refresh XML content. Now depending on how many games you transferred over, this could take a few minutes to 5 or 10 minutes. Now once you get back to this screen, we're going to navigate over to Webman Games and you should see some games popping up. Now if you got cover art, it'll show. If you don't, it'll just show a generic disk. So you can see all the games that we transferred over seem to be showing up. Now if you got more games you transferred over, again it'll just take longer, and Webman sort of freezes when you have a whole lot of games that it's trying to go through the catalog. Now you can see here I'm installing the package game that we transferred over earlier. I think this is a PS2 game. So now that you see, there we go. So this works great for all the games that are, again, 4.2 gigabytes and lower. Now if you hold down select on your PS3 controller, you'll see this menu. We're going to take note of our IP address and we're going to jump to our computer and we're going to open up the others folder and install FileZilla. Now the PS3 external hard drive can't handle large file sizes, which most good games have. So we're going to use the FileZilla to transfer these games on the internal PS3 hard drive. So now that this is installed, I'm going to plug in my backup drive, which you could already see right here. And I'm also going to plug in the external PS3 hard drive because I want to transfer games later on. So the easiest way to do this is to navigate to the games you want to transfer using the Windows File Explorer. So you can see we're going to start with the PS2 games, because PS2 games need to be on the internal hard drive to work. So you can see if you try to just do it on your external hard drive, you get an error. So what we're going to do is use FileZilla, and we're going to type in the IP address of our PS3, and we're going to do a quick connect. Click OK, and you can see this is our internal hard drive to our PS3. Now if you double click HDD 0, that's our PS3 internal hard drive, and it's pretty much got the same folder structure as our PS3 external hard drive. So I'm not going to go over every system and every type of game, but it's pretty much just drag and drop. So on the left hand side you want to navigate to where your games are. So we'll navigate over to our PS2 and we'll pick a game and we'll just drag it over to the PS2 ISO folder on our right hand side. Now you can see at the very bottom you can see the transfer and its progress. So you can see everything is transferring over. Now you can throw a whole bunch of files on and set this on in the background and everything will transfer over for you. But I do find that games with a whole bunch of little files tend to corrupt. So you got to keep an eye on it, and if you have any failed transfers, you just got to transfer over the game again. So now if you want to stream all your games from a server, I'm going to show you how to do that. So if you open up our download pack, we're going to open up the second folder, and then we're going to open up the others folder, and you can see PS3 net server. Inside here is everything we need to do to host our own server with our PS3 games. So we're going to copy over all those files, and then you want to set up your ROMs exactly like you would on a PS3 external hard drive. So you can see wherever you've done that, copy over the PS3 net server files, and then you want to launch the application. Right click and run as administrator. Now once it launches, we're going to need to add this folder. So click the three dots and then navigate to the same folder where you launched this program. Now again, you've got to have all your ROMs in the correct folders for this to work. So once you've navigated to the correct place, click start, and you'll see your firewall should ask you to allow access. Now we want to make sure we write down the IP address up top and jump to our PS3. Whenever you add games to your PS3, you want to go to Webman Games, Webman Setup, and then you want to refresh games in XMB. So depending on how many games, this could take a few minutes, and if it freezes, just turn off and on your PS3. Now, we didn't add the IP address yet, so this is only going to show the games that we transferred over with FileZilla. So you can see all our Game Boy games and the cover art transferred over just fine. So go back to Webman Setup and Webman Setup again, and it's going to launch a browser. So this is where we're going to add our net server we just did. So you want to edit this IP address to the one that was showing up on the app before, and just make sure it's the exact same. So I'm going to enter that in, and then you want to scroll to the very bottom, or make sure that's clicked off, and then scroll right down to the very bottom. Looks like I'm having a hard time. But at the very bottom you should see a save button. There we go. Click save, and this will save the IP, and then refresh. Now I have a lot of games, so my PS3 ended up freezing, so I turned it off and on again, but you can see I've got everything that's on the hard drive on my computer that's viewable. So this is a little bit slower to load the games, but should work just fine. So there you go. Hopefully this has helped you out.